The locker room door opened 45 minutes before the fight. Three men in expensive suits walked in without knocking. The biggest one, a man everyone in boxing knew by reputation, if not by name, sat down across from Muhammad Ali and said 5 words that would have terrified most fighters. "You're going to lose tonight." What happened in the next 10 minutes didn't just save Ali's integrity. It proved that some men can't be bought, can't be threatened, and can't be controlled. This is the true story of the night Muhammad Ali faced the mob and won without throwing a single punch. It was 1971. Muhammad Ali had recently returned to boxing after his 3-year exile for refusing military service in Vietnam. The Supreme Court had overturned his conviction, and Ali was fighting his way back to the heavyweight championship. But he'd lost his first attempt to reclaim the title, falling to Joe Frazier in the fight of the century in March of that year. Now, several months later, Ali was scheduled to fight a lesser opponent in a tune-up bout designed to rebuild his confidence and his ranking. The opponent doesn't matter for this story. What matters is that certain people with connections to organized crime had bet heavily against Ali. Not because they thought he would lose, but because they'd made sure he would lose. Or at least they thought they had. The problem was, nobody had bothered to ask Muhammad Ali if he was willing to participate in their plan. When the 3 men walked into Ali's locker room, Angelo Dundee, Ali's trainer, immediately stood up. "This is a closed locker room," Dundee said. "Nobody's supposed to be in here before a fight." The biggest of the 3 men, the one who did the talking, smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "We're not nobody," he said. "We're friends of the sport. Friends who make sure things run smoothly. We just want to have a conversation with the champ." Ali, who'd been lying on the training table getting a rub-down, sat up. He recognized the type immediately. Ali had been around boxing his entire adult life. He knew that organized crime had its fingers in the sport, had for decades. Fixed fights, controlled rankings, owned fighters. It was an open secret that nobody talked about publicly, because talking about it could get you hurt or killed. "What kind of conversation?" Ali asked. The man sat down, crossed his legs, made himself comfortable. His 2 associates stood by the door, making it clear that nobody was leaving until this conversation was finished. "The kind where we make sure everybody benefits," the man said. "See, champ, you're a smart guy. You understand business. And this fight tonight, it's business. Good business for everyone if it goes the right way." Ali knew exactly what the man meant. He'd heard stories about fighters being approached before bouts, being told to take a dive in a specific round, being promised money or threatened with violence. Some fighters took the deals. Others refused and paid the price. A few refused and nothing happened because their refusal became public, and the mob didn't want that kind of attention. "What's the right way?" Ali asked, plain dumb. The man smiled again. "The right way is your opponent wins tonight. Maybe round 7, round 8. You take some shots, you go down, and you don't get up. You get your purse, you get to walk out healthy, and everybody who bet on your opponent makes money, including us, including you if you're smart." Angelo Dundee moved toward Ali, but Ali held up his hand. He wanted to hear all of it. "How much?" Ali asked. The man named a figure. It was substantial, more than Ali's purse for the fight, though nowhere near what Ali made on his biggest bouts. Tax-free, cash, untraceable. All you have to do is take a nap in round 8. There was silence in the locker room. The 2 associates by the door watched Ali carefully. Angelo Dundee looked like he wanted to say something but knew better. This was Ali's decision, and whatever Ali decided, Dundee would have to live with. The man waited, confident in his proposal. In his experience, fighters always took the deal. The money was good and the alternative was bad. Nobody wanted to be the hero. Heroes got hurt. Muhammad Ali stood up from the training table. At 6'3", he towered over the seated mobster. "Let me ask you something," Ali said, his voice calm. "You know who I am?" The man laughed. "Of course I know who you are. You're Muhammad Ali, former heavyweight champion. That's why we're here, because you're famous, and when famous people lose, lots of money changes hands." Ali nodded. "That's right. I'm Muhammad Ali. I'm the man who gave up 3.5 years of my career, 3.5 years of my prime because I wouldn't compromise what I believe in. The United States government, the most powerful government in the world, tried to make me do something I didn't want to do. They stripped my title. They took my license. They threatened me with 5 years in prison. And you know what I told them?" The man's smile had faded slightly. He sensed this wasn't going the way he'd expected. "I told them no," Ali continued. "I told the President of the United States, the Supreme Court, the U.S. military, all of them, I told them no. I was willing to go to jail. I was willing to give up millions of dollars. I was willing to give up my career, because some things matter more than money. Some things matter more than being safe. Some things you don't compromise on, no matter who's asking." Ali took a step closer to the man. "Now I don't know your name. I don't know who you work for, but I know you're not the president, you're not the Supreme Court, you're not the U.S. military. You're just a guy in a nice suit asking me to do something I don't want to do. And you think I'm going to say yes to you when I said no to them?" The man's face had gone hard. The smile was completely gone now. "You don't understand the situation you're in," he said quietly. "This isn't the government. This isn't lawyers and courtrooms. This is different. People who say no to us, they have accidents, they have problems, their families have problems." Ali didn't flinch. "Is that a threat?" he asked. "Because if you're threatening me, you better understand something. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of your friends. I'm not afraid of your organization. You know why? Because I've been threatened by experts. I've been threatened by the FBI. I've been threatened by the U.S. government. I've had death threats from the Ku Klux Klan. I've had Nation of Islam members tell me they'd kill me for leaving the organization. And I'm still here, still standing, still fighting." Muhammad Ali's voice grew stronger. "You think you scare me? I've fought Sonny Liston, and Liston was scarier than you'll ever be. I've stood up to a government that wanted to put me in prison. I've walked away from millions of dollars because I wouldn't compromise my principles. And you think I'm going to throw a fight because you showed up in my locker room with 2 guys and some threats?" The man stood up, his face flushed with anger and something else, uncertainty. He wasn't used to being talked to like this. In his world, when he made these kinds of visits, people said yes. They were afraid. They took the money. They did what they were told. But Ali wasn't afraid, and the man could see it in his eyes. This wasn't an act. Ali genuinely didn't care about the threat. "You're making a mistake," the man said. Ali shook his head. "No, you're making a mistake. You walked into the wrong locker room. You tried to buy the wrong fighter. I don't work for you. I don't work for the mob. I don't work for anybody except myself and Allah. And neither one of us is telling me to lose this fight."
Ali moved closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper, but somehow more powerful. "Let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to walk out of this locker room right now. You're going to go back to whoever sent you, and you're going to tell them that Muhammad Ali said no. You're going to tell them that they bet on the wrong horse. And you're going to tell them that if they ever send anyone into my locker room again, I won't just say no. I'll make it very public. I'll call a press conference. I'll tell the whole world that the mob tried to fix my fight. And then where will you be?" The threat landed. The man's eyes widened slightly. The last thing organized crime wanted was public attention, especially from someone as famous as Muhammad Ali. If Ali went public with accusations of fight fixing, there would be investigations, congressional hearings, media firestorms. The heat would be unbearable. "You wouldn't," the man said, but his voice lacked conviction. Ali smiled for the first time. "Try me. I went to war with the U.S. government and won. You think I'm afraid to go to war with you? I've got nothing to lose. I've already lost everything once and came back. But you've got a lot to lose. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to leave, now. And we're never going to have this conversation again. Because if we do, I promise you, the whole world is going to hear about it." Angelo Bendi had moved to stand beside Ali. Two more of Ali's team had appeared in the doorway behind the mobsters, drawn by the commotion. The balance of power in the room had shifted. The man looked at Ali for a long moment, calculation in his eyes. Finally, he nodded slightly, a gesture that might have been respect or might have been admission of defeat. "You're either the bravest man I've ever met or the stupidest." Ali's smile widened. "I've been called both. Usually I'm both at the same time. But I'm always honest, and I always keep my word. So when I tell you I'll go public if this happens again, you'd better believe me." The man adjusted his jacket, signaled to his associates. As they moved toward the door, he stopped and looked back at Ali. "For what it's worth, I hope you win tonight." There was no irony in his voice. It sounded almost genuine. Then the three men were gone, the door closing behind them. Angelo Dundee let out a breath he'd been holding. "Do you know what you just did?" he asked Ali. Ali shrugged and lay back down on the training table. "I just told some guy I'm not going to throw a fight. Same thing I've been telling people my whole life. Nobody owns me, nobody controls me, not the government, not the mob, nobody." "They could come back," Dundee said. "They could wait for you outside. They could—" Ali cut him off. "They won't. You know why? Because I meant what I said. If anything happens to me, everyone will know who did it. And the mob doesn't want that kind of attention. They're businessmen. Bad business is when everyone's looking at you. They'll leave me alone." That night, Muhammad Ali went out and destroyed his opponent. It wasn't close. It wasn't competitive. Ali boxed brilliantly, knocked the man out in the 8th round, ironically the same round where he'd been told to take his dive. After the fight, Ali was asked by a reporter if he'd had any trouble preparing for the bout. "No trouble at all," Ali said, smiling. "Just had to remind some people who I am and what I stand for." The story of the mob visit to Ali's locker room didn't become public for years. Those who were there kept quiet, partly out of respect for Ali, partly out of fear of what might happen if they talked. But eventually the story leaked out, as these stories always do. Angelo Dundee confirmed it in interviews late in his life. Others who were there, whose names are still sometimes kept private, corroborated the details. What makes the story remarkable isn't just that Ali refused the mob's demand. Other fighters had refused before, though not many. What makes it remarkable is how Ali refused. He didn't just say no. He turned the tables. He made the mobster understand that threatening Ali wasn't like threatening other fighters. Ali had already proven he couldn't be intimidated by anyone, including the most powerful government on earth. Why would he be intimidated by the mob?
There's a lesson in that moment in the locker room that goes beyond boxing and beyond organized crime. It's about knowing who you are. It's about having principles that you won't compromise, no matter who's asking you to compromise them. Ali had drawn his lines years earlier, when he refused military service. Once you've given up millions of dollars and risked prison for your beliefs, once you've stood up to that kind of pressure, nothing else can move you. The mob represented everything Ali had fought against his entire life: corruption, intimidation, the idea that everything has a price. By refusing their demand, by threatening to expose them publicly, Ali proved something that transcended sports. He proved that integrity isn't just a word. It's a choice you make in moments when it's difficult, when it's dangerous, when it would be so much easier to just go along. The man who visited Ali's locker room that night learned something that the U.S. government had already learned. Muhammad Ali couldn't be bought, couldn't be intimidated, and couldn't be controlled. You could strip his title, take his license, threaten him with prison, or show up with mob muscle and veiled threats. None of it mattered. Ali was going to do what Ali believed was right, consequences be damned. That's what made him the greatest. Not just his skill in the ring, though that was extraordinary. Not just his speed and power and intelligence as a fighter, though all of that was world-class. What made Ali the greatest was his absolute refusal to compromise who he was for anyone. The mob learned that lesson the hard way, in a locker room 45 minutes before a fight, when they walked in thinking they were going to buy a fighter and walked out having met a man who couldn't be bought at any price. If this story of courage and integrity moved you, share it with someone who needs to remember that some things aren't for sale. Your principles, your integrity, your self-respect, these aren't negotiable no matter who's asking. Muhammad Ali knew that, and on that night in 1971, he taught it to 3 men in expensive suits who thought everyone had a price. They were wrong, and they never came back.